6:30, I'd like to call this meeting of the Finance Committee to order for Thursday, February 15th, 2024, in the Coit Meeting Room. First order of business will be the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now, if we could have a moment of silence for those who have lost their lives in service to our community and for loved ones who have passed. Thank you. Is there anyone here for public comment? Seeing none, next order of business. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes for the Finance Committee meeting of Thursday, February 1st, 2024 in open session.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Is there any opposition to approving the minutes as written? Hearing none, passed by unanimous consent. Appointments and hearing, we have nothing. There is no one here from the Select Board, and no one here from the School Committee. Move on. Nothing under old business. New business. Mr. Town Manager, I think you have something for us.
Hi there. How are you?
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Being distributed is my proposed recommended operating budget, along with the preliminary capital improvement program requests. The original requested budget total was $75,235,412, and the recommended budget as submitted is $73,689,075, or an increase of approximately 4.9%. The original request was reduced by approximately 1.6 million. Some of the driving factors that I've already reviewed with the Select Board are fixed costs. Obviously, the intent was to try to maintain level services in this proposed budget, but we did get hit with some things that are beyond our control. Electricity supply is anticipated to increase by 52%. Natural gas supply did receive a decrease. Wastewater anticipated initial flow was to commence January 2025 with full operation by July 2025. After consultation with Weston and Sampson, the original budget request was reduced by $420,000. Cape Cod Tech is increasing Mashpee assessment by 16.4% due to 5 additional students. The veteran service budget is an estimate only, with the final figures pending. Medical insurance is increasing by 8%. Current net state aid figures reflect an overall decrease of 2.2. County retirement increased by 13.1%, but I do want to let the Finance Committee know that that number is actually going to come down because there's an early payment reduction, and we always pay by July 1st. So we will get the reduction in that. The recommended budget does currently include reclassifying 2 current part-time positions to full-time and adding a full-time employee in the Department of Public Works and the Police Department. And it should satisfy all mission-critical needs to maintain department operations except for wastewater. That obviously will be a separate item on to itself once we become operational. As I mentioned to the Select Board, I have met with school officials and staff. Adjustments are still being considered as I sit here. As a matter of fact, I attempted to reach out to the superintendent this afternoon, and additional meetings are being scheduled, but we did have to meet the deadline to get the budget to the Select Board and also to you folks. So for the purposes of tonight, this is the preliminary recommended budget, but I think it's realistic to think that there will be some tweaks before we get to town meeting. And what I mean by that is to try to avoid any kind of so-called floor fight with the school or anything like that. We're going to try to work things out so that we have a balanced budget, but at the same time, all the mission-critical needs are being met. I did say last year that we very well could be looking at a override for the proposed budget. I'm comfortable in saying, after meeting with the finance team, that we will not be looking for an override for fiscal year '25, but I don't see any way possible for us not to be seeking one a year from now when we get to the point of wastewater being online. And to maintain the services that you have now. So, the capital improvement program, which a member sits on, is recommending $7,600,634 for fiscal year '25. This is a reduction from the original request of $9,457,840. There is an outstanding issue on CIP. Your member is fully aware. And what this consists of is the application of the security film at the school and whether or not it disrupts radio communication, and if so, how do we rectify that and what is the cost? So we were hoping to have the testing conducted and the report completed by the time I reached this meeting, but it didn't happen. So at this juncture, the best I can say is the testing is going to be conducted on February 20th. Once we have the results, we'll be meeting with CIP and going from there.
I have a question about that. It seems to me that I heard from the superintendent at one of the CIP meetings that there had been an issue of non-communication or problems with communication long before now. And was that ever resolved, whether there was an issue even before talking about the security film?
Well, just like the superintendent prefers when I'm speaking to you that she be present, when she's speaking to you, I'd like to be present because there's two sides to every story.
Right, okay.
To answer your question, I'm not going to suggest that there aren't some issues in the past that were reported I'm not going to deny that. The core issue is whether or not this is going to have the impact that's detrimental to radio communication that was directly communicated to me by the fire chief.
Okay.
And he received his information from the deputy fire chief, who had just attended a training session on this very product that they are applying to the windows.
Okay.
So it is possible that there was a communication issue, but it isn't necessarily irrelevant to say that this could aggravate an existing problem even worse, to make it detrimental for emergency services to be communicated in a time of desperate need.
Okay, thank you.
So just for clarity, for people who may be watching and aren't familiar, could you just explain what the issue is?
Yes. The school sought an amount of money in CIP for what I call security film to be put on a window for the sake of enhancing safety and security. I don't think anybody would argue that that should be a priority. What was brought to my attention through the fire chief, as I mentioned, is that this product has a detrimental impact on radio communication. And he received the information from the deputy fire chief, who had just attended a seminar, a training session regarding this particular issue. Apparently, fire departments are discussing this. So whether or not this particular item that is being used is going to be detrimental to radio communication, we don't know until there's a test conducted. But what I had suggested at the CIP meeting is it wouldn't be wise to apply it not knowing what the impact could be. If there's no detrimental impact, then I think I can speak for the CIP committee and say, most likely it will fly.
Right.
But on the other hand, if there is an impact and it's identified as an impact that's detrimental, then I think we've got to have a contingency plan to cover what is referred to as a repeater system in order to ensure that the radio communication is not impaired. Do you think that's an
That's very accurate.
accurate
Yep.
assessment?
Yes, sir, I do.
You were there.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's important, I think Rodney's right, that no one would argue that the safety issue, it's a communication issue. And how bad is it if there is one, and what to do if there is one, and where we go from there, right?
Thank you. Any further questions at this point?
So I have a couple of questions. How did you get the reduction? Where were some things that you cut from to get the reduction, the 1.6 million? And well done.
Well, I don't want to take all the credit there. That's a team effort.
There you go.
So there were several departments that we made adjustments. One of the big issues was we had a couple retirements, and we have some upcoming retirements. So those were top step individuals, employees. They will be replaced with lower step employees, so that's going to be a savings in some of the salaries. And the health insurance, we did, there was a $232,000 reduction in the health insurance. We changed the number of enrollees. We lowered the number that we had estimated, and then the original estimated increase was going to be 10%. It's 8%, so that was a savings as well. So that was probably our biggest savings. We did decrease, and I think we had mentioned this before because you had a question. The unemployment came down by $20,000 to reflect current claims, I should say. And let's see. It's kind of a multitude of different departmental adjustments. There was a position in one department, an assistant that was requested. That's not going to move forward. The insurance premiums, we did reduce that by about $159,000, just based on more accurate figures. That was a big savings. The debt is being reduced, the temporary interest, I should say. The treasurer kind of fine-tuned some of that, reduced that by about $75,000. And then the proposed a good portion of the proposed reductions are the recommended school reductions as well. That's about half of it.
And I think the big portion on the town side, Greg, is sewer. When we were taking a look at the overall picture, and you can save, I think it was 400,000, I think.
Yes.
400,000 for budgeting half a year versus the entire year.
Gotcha.
That's why I'm telling you, it's temporary.
Yes.
Right.
I don't want you to think that we're going to be able to wave a magic wand and do this next year, because the anticipation is it's most likely going to be an override in order to maintain level services.
Right.
And I'm not talking about increased services. I'm talking about level services. The key being when we add whatever it is,
Right.
800,000, 1.2 million
Right.
to wastewater for contracted services, it's fair to say that that is going to require an override.
And will the wastewater superintendent's department continue to oversee all the wastewater stuff?
Yes, yes. My anticipated plan is the superintendent will continue to oversee the contracted services, as well as have an assistant, which is going to be a separate warrant article coming before town meeting in May. But that is one of the dollar amounts that we factored into our bottom line in order to have a balanced budget.
Oh, so you already factored that in, more or less?
Well, we have, yes.
Okay. Good planning.
Well, you've got to have a funding source, and the finance director always reminds me of that. With no funding source, she's not going to be able to pay the bill.
And if I understood you correctly, there was some decreases at the school end of the budget, but you're meeting with them to iron those out?
Well, I'm trying, yes. Yes.
Fair enough. Understood.
So basically, these are similar numbers to what you had received in your books, but these are reflective of the numbers that are being recommended as I speak. Again, if we can get to an amicable finish line where we don't have any gutting of current services, then that's what we all strive for.
So can I move to CIP for a minute?
Sure.
Okay. So CIP, the total was $7,600,000. But that, I mean, just look at that number, it sounds like a large number, but can you break down that number so that it gives our viewers an understanding of what's coming from things like the capital stabilization and really what it's going to cost versus things that were maybe moved or delayed?
Sure. So out of DPW, there's a total of $703,127. That's all coming from capital stabilization. Transfer station was $26,000. That's from a DEP grant and capital stabilization. Fire department, $615,000. $475,000 would be coming from ambulance receipts, and then $85,000 and $55,000 would be coming from capital stabilization. From IT, there's $100,000 all from MCAP funds, and Department of Natural Resources, a total of $338,007, capital stabilization. And planning and construction, we've already touched base on the school window film and the radio repeaters. Right now, that's set up at $100,000, capital stabilization. The flooring replacement, which was initially a little higher, but it is tentatively at $47,500. That's capital stabilization. The security camera DVR replacement, $25,000, capital stabilization. And then the DPW masonry wall, that's $80,000 for a reauthorization of existing funds. The PD renovation replacement design and engineering is 2.7, but that is a reauthorization or change of purpose.
Yes.
The DPW facility design is 1.6. That's free cash capital stabilization. The high school parking lot is $350,000. That's existing funds. Fire alarm system upgrades, $128,000 capital stabilization. Heritage park improvements, CPA fund, $70,000. DNR boat equipment storage, that's $130,000, and that would be a reappropriation as well of DNR building funds. DNR shellfish propagation, $70,000 capital stabilization. The PD lease vehicles, $168,000, that's capital stabilization. Other vehicles, $106,000 capital stabilization, and tasers, $169,000 to re-equip the PD, and that's capital stabilization for a total of $443,000. School, kitchen equipment upgrades, $25,000. Chromebook leases, $50,000. That's a total of $75,000 for capital stabilization. And I think that is your total.
Right. So if I'm reading this right, we have lots of funded sources in this. Funds that we already have are being reappropriated. So that brings that to actually what we're using through capital stabilization and, well, through everything else. It looks like we're only like $3,300,000. Is that?
Right, between grant funds, ambulance receipts, cable funds, capital stabilization, and free cash, which are funding sources.
Right.
That's about 4.2 million. And the remaining 3.3 is going to be reauthorization of either existing funds, extending an appropriation. So that will be funding that is not, it will not be new funding, I should
Right,
say.
exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, to be
That's
clear,
the key.
this is money that's already been approved,
Exactly.
unused, and we're just you're just requesting the reassigning of what
Yes.
the purpose of those are.
Exactly.
Yes, yes, sir.
So
And-
it's
and
not,
the
it's
other
not a
thing-
request for new money.
Exactly.
Yes, sir. I would also point out that the finance team, specifically the finance director, did recommend a policy be adopted by the board, which it subsequently was, for the purpose of having a CIP program that can cover these essential pieces of equipment and these assets, whether it be vehicles or any of the things that I just listed. We were probably unprepared to take on the cost associated with capital. And if you don't invest in these types of planned projects, the problem is you fall behind, your facilities deteriorate, your vehicles deteriorate, and there's a trickle-down effect. And ultimately, it affects operating efficiency. So I will give her total credit for making sure, I think it's 15%?
Correct.
15% of free cash goes into capital stabilization. And it's a wise, prudent move, because we don't get into these situations where we're all looking at each other saying, how do we fund this? And this is not wasteful spending. This is necessary spending, and you sat through these meetings.
Oh, yes. The stories you hear about the need, it's real in every department. It was hard to decide what to cut and what to keep. It's not easy choices.
It's not. And obviously, again, the finance director tells me exactly what the bottom line has got to be. My responsibility is to make sure that we meet that level. And sometimes these decisions are not easy. Sometimes these are very challenging. And you sat there, Greg. Yeah. It's one of the most difficult things to the job. But you have to do it, or you're going to the people for an override. And we're trying to avoid that.
Right.
We're going to avoid it again in this upcoming fiscal year, but I'm not promising you anything for next year.
Well, you put it off pretty good. I remember when I first came on board many years ago that there was talk of an override possibly in 2020 or 2021, and that never happened. And it's because of the finance team, it's good management, and your good management too. So you pushed it off pretty far.
Again, I'm not making any promises next year.
We understand that. We can hope.
Yes.
So just an idea, what are some of the things that are still pending for capital projects that we may be looking at in the future?
What I can do, I don't think I have the
Five-year
plan in front of me. Well, actually, I probably do here. I'll make sure that you get that distributed to all of you. So you have the 5-year projection.
Yeah, great. A couple of other things we could use would be a summary of the free cash and a summary of the capital stabilization.
Let me just make notes.
Yep. Just so we know what numbers we're looking at for those.
Free cash is easy.
Yeah.
What else did you
The
want?
capital stabilization fund.
Yep. And the 5-year plan.
Yeah, those would be very useful.
All easy requests.
Yep. Let's see. Is it possible to also get the summary of the turnbacks for the last fiscal
Yes.
year?
You're talking as of June 30th.
Yeah, for the last fiscal year. And one question, the 15% of the free cash that goes to the stabilization, is that of the overall balance each year or of newly certified funds?
It's the newly certified. So
Okay.
if you start with 10 million, it's the 15% of the 10 million.
Yeah. Okay. So it's not a running balance that you take 15% of every year. It's just what gets newly certified that year.
Exactly, and that's added to the capital stabilization, which then builds up.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure.
Yes.
And when you have 15 million, obviously, that's a little more helpful than compared to if you had 3 million.
You're right. Any further questions? Hearing none. Thank you very
So
much.
obviously, I'll be back. If you have any questions or committee members have questions, feel free to email me direct.
Yep.
And then I will get
Yeah.
you the answers and
Yeah,
be at the meeting.
I do have one request from a committee member that I didn't get to send out, but I will send that out. There was something that just crossed my mind. Oh, what are we looking at for, since it's closed as of Monday, what are we looking at for articles that we can anticipate?
Yeah, there's only one petition article, and that's a road taking. And some of the other articles, I haven't even gotten to. But none of them are
Are they out of the ordinary?
are out of the ordinary.
Most of them are standard ones we see every May.
Like, there are some for things that I've referred to here, like, for instance, the assistant in wastewater. That will be a warrant article,
Right.
but,
Sewer.
and obviously the sewer. Oh, I
Right.
should comment on the sewer. I don't have any number for you or for the select board, but I do have a tentative schedule, and that is planning on having a joint meeting with the select board and the sewer commission on Wednesday, March 6th, at 6:30 PM. If you're wondering why on a Wednesday, it's because Tuesday is Super Tuesday, and on Monday, this room is going to be occupied with early voting or equipment. So that's the earliest that we could do it, and I am going to be meeting with the engineers at the end of February 29th, to be exact. So stay tuned, and we will have additional information for you.
Can I ask a question or request? And we're going to get some number from them for going forward. Is it possible with that number, we get how that number is divided up, what their budget is for that number?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're going to look, obviously, for a breakdown.
Yep. That'd be interesting to see.
We'll get you all that.
Other question regarding the technical schools budget. Will they be presenting that again this year?
Yes, and I know that our local school officials have brought that up to me, that, they should be challenged on what they submit, but I'm not in a position where I can do that personally. If we get together with all of the other towns that are part of that partnership, we can get together and, I guess, object to the adjustment, but the town of Mashpee is not authorized to just unilaterally, arbitrarily say, oh, we're not going to pay that.
Right. No, I was just wondering if we will be able to get a chance to see it, and
Sure.
other than just a
I
line.
know
I know
that-
they have come and presented it to us before, and I just want to make sure that
Well,
possibility happens.
What if you would like, Mr. Chair, I am more than happy to reach out to Mr. Sanborn
Yep.
and say, I've spoken with my finance committee, and they would like to have you before them.
That would be great.
I will do that.
Excellent.
That would be wonderful, just to give us an idea of what's going on.
And I will email you.
Thank you very much. Anything further for the town manager? No. Thank you again, very much,
Thank you.
all of you.
Have a good night.
All right.
I did that.
All right. Any additional topics? Anything on the, what other committee are you on? The Charter
Charter
Committee.
review, that's coming up. Another meeting come up on the 26th, I think.
Yeah.
And they're still going through the different things. We're working on a survey that will go out to the community. And so we'll probably finalize that. We're also working on a preliminary preamble to the town charter. And so that's coming along too. And continue to iron it out.
All right, sounds good. All right. So I will take these brand-new numbers we got, update the spreadsheet and resend it to everybody so we can see what we're actually looking at for the budget. As you then review it, if you have any questions you would like answered at the next meeting, which will be the 22nd, send them to me. I will forward them in advance to the town manager so he can be prepared. If not, come with your questions. We'll get them all gathered and have them ready for the meeting after that.
All right. Does anybody have any questions about the CIP? Next week.
I don't. I like, while the number is large,
Yeah.
the fact that over half of it is money we already have or grant money,
Right.
and the other, all but 70,000 of that 3.3 million is already in existing budgets and we're just reusing it.
Correct.
So it's no new money. And that 70,000 is come from community preservation?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's like, there is no new money in this budget for capital improvement, which is amazing, first of all. But it still begs the question of what other projects are being put off that we need to look, the town needs to be aware of for the future.
Right.
It's like, we're getting away with not having to spend any money this year as far as from new funds.
Right.
But down the road, there's gonna be some, because there's a lot of stuff that's going on that needs to be taken care of and addressed.
So there is a 5-year plan.
Yeah.
As the town manager mentioned, and that has it listed out pretty regularly how they're going to spend it. However, there are things that will come that are unanticipated.
Yeah, oh, of course.
I would say the police station, we get probably now in the 5-year plan or in the future. DPW probably as well. If they're doing a engineering design,
Right,
likely to move on that at some point.
yeah.
Now, whether that will come through some different means, I don't know, but it'll come eventually. But there were things, you sit in those meetings and everyone has a story and everybody has a valid issue or need, but when you just can't do everything.
Right.
And so, and some of those things will be put off to the next year and hope they can go through, so. And there is give and take by the whole group, which is nice.
Yep. All right. Next meeting, next Thursday, the 22nd, back in this room. And not having anything else, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Hearing none. Any opposition to adjournment? Hearing none, passed by unanimous consent. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.